Jillian Johnsrud never expected to be able to retire early, so she hatched a plan to retire often. Inspired by the idea of sabbatical years, she set out to sprinkle retirements throughout her life. At 40, she had already taken over a dozen mini retirements. These allowed her to pursue dreams like living abroad, traveling to 27 countries, adopting 4 kids, plus having 2 biological kids, investing in real estate, and touring the US in a camper. Jillian has taught, coached, and written about mini retirements for almost a decade. She hosts the Retire Often podcast and is a popular speaker and consultant for mini retirements. And she has a new book coming out on September 9th called Retire Often. Jillian lives in Montana, where she spends her time in the garden drinking tea. Jillian, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
Retirement is such a fun topic to talk about for me. I think we're all dreamers and dreaming is fun. And retirement is one thing that people love to dream about. But as you know, my audience has so many women who are in big life transitions. We've got a lot of women who are getting divorced, maybe some with big career changes or new empty nesters. And for a variety of reasons, they can't even think about the possibility of retirement. Like maybe their funds are low, or the idea of being able to quit work altogether to live out those golden years, just a pipe dream for them. Is that something you've run into?
I think traditional retirement is incredibly daunting. You
Yes.
know, in middle age, maybe you have 100,000 saved, 200,000, and you're like, wait, I need to get to how much money? Like $1 million, $2 million? That gap feels enormous. And so I think a lot of people are looking at, okay, I'm not going to be able to retire at 60. Definitely not going to be able to retire at 55. But maybe not 65. It might make more financial sense to work until full Social Security age and work until 70. But there is this reality of, are there things in life that you won't be able to do in your 70s? Well, or maybe your tastes have just changed and, the dreams that you dreamed in your 40s just don't sound as good in your 70s.
It's such an interesting balance, though, too, because I look at people who are retiring in their 50s or their
Mhm.
early 60s and they get bored. They're
Mhm.
losing intellectual stimulation that they had at work. They're losing social connections that they had. And I know we all say, we're going to find hobbies, there's going to be plenty to do, and we'll meet up with friends and stuff. But I think for a lot of people, that is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, creating meaning and purpose is a little bit trickier and more effort than I think we give it credit. And it's something that if you haven't been practicing that throughout your working life because you were so busy working, like that took so much of your time and energy, you didn't find other things that cultivated that meaning and purpose. The idea that at 65, you're going to find, a dozen things that make your life challenging and meaningful and add that purpose is kind of a daunting order.
Well, Jillian, you're looking at retirement from a completely different perspective. And I think lots and lots and lots of us are still looking at it in the traditional way. I want to hear more about this different perspective and this concept of a mini retirement because I don't know what that is.
Yeah, mini retirement is instead of just working for a solid 40 years and then maybe retiring for 20 or 30 years, what if we sprinkled these small mini micro retirements throughout our career so that we could lean into those things, those seasons of life that have expiration dates? Not everything is going to wait for us until we're 70. So I define a mini retirement with three things. The first, it's a month or longer. I find a month is kind of the minimum effective dose. You're stepping away from your primary career and you're focusing on something meaningful and hopefully maybe also enjoyable, but definitely that meaningful.
Well, I think that on the university level for professors, they get these sabbaticals where they're taking maybe a semester, maybe an entire academic year off. I know that I hear tip a lot of times they're immersed in research or writing a book or something like that, but they can be doing other things. When you talk about a mini retirement, that's almost what it sounds like to me.
I find there's 2 main kind of focuses that people have. It's either there's a season of life with an expiration date, my kids will only be in school for a period of time. My parents will only be healthy enough to hike through Ireland for so many years, and if I don't do it now, the window will have closed, and I just have to accept the fact I'll never get to do that. Or there's a second thing where there's certain goals, certain dreams that don't fit into nights and weekends. You're not going to hike the Camino on a 4-day weekend. You might not be able to, I took a mini retirement to lose like 40 pounds. Should I have been able to do that on nights and weekends? Sure, maybe.
Theoretically.
Add that to 100 other things on my plate, but to be able to focus just on myself, my health, my goals for a short period of time while I figure it out, like, oh, wait, how do I feed myself in my 40s? Like, what does this 40-year-old body require? Um, and so there are these things that, yeah, if you want to do a big career pivot, if you want to do these bigger adventures, you might need larger chunks of time off to do it.
Okay, I am always anticipating what the audience is thinking when they
Yeah.
hear you, and I am guessing people are thinking, "Okay, you must come from wealth, or maybe you've always been self-employed, so you have a lot of flexibility, or there's something special about your situation that allows you to do this when I couldn't." So I wanna hear about what your career has been over your adulthood, and how you got to this place where you were able to do these mini retirements or where you wanted to and you came up with the idea.
It's interesting. I think 30 years ago, 50 years ago, we were rewarded for a solid 40-year career. 40 years, one company, one career path, and like that was our best chance at a financially stable retirement. It's just not the case anymore. So, many retirements are something you can negotiate off the time from your employer, or you can fit them in between jobs. Or the third option is sometimes life presents you with an opportunity. Something great happens, something bad happens, and you're unexpectedly, not working. And I've done all 3. So, in my 20s, part of the reason I decided to retire early or retire often was that I didn't think I could retire early. I wasn't in a high earning profession. My spouse at the time wasn't in a high earning profession. Like, I worked a lot of normal jobs. I worked, starting in high school, I waited tables and then I worked for Starbucks and then I worked for REI and then I did commission sales for mattresses and office chairs and then I did commission sales for furniture. Our combined income was never $100,000. And there are unique challenges and unique opportunities for everyone. For people who are maybe on the lower end of the income, like average or below average, the great thing is you don't have to save as much money. Like the ability to save up for that is much more feasible. I usually encourage people like if you're going to have to replace your income, whatever that monthly expenses are, budget maybe an additional 50% for this adventure. So if you normally spend like 5,000 a month, save an extra 2,500 for that month off. Well, $7,500. If you think about how much you have to save over a 3-year period, we're talking like 2,500 a year. So like 200 bucks a month. So if you're starting out thinking, what's more important to me? Having these amazing experiences and adventures and leaning into hobbies a month every 3 years, or driving a car that's like a $300 car payment versus a $500 car payment. Like it might not be quite as nice, but if you know I'm going to have these experiences that I'm going to remember the rest of my life, these are going to become the highlights of my life, that might be a worthwhile trade off.
I hadn't thought about framing it that way because I was thinking about, gosh, that $7,500 is a lot of money for someone to save if they are someone who's traditionally been living paycheck to paycheck, hasn't had a lot of extra money. But when you think about, okay, you need to find $200 a month in your budget, and there are things that we all spend money on and that we could reduce if, like for me, there has to be that carrot out there.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get to do the thing. And I've decided that's more important to me than having the fancier car. Now, if someone says you have to save something, you have to cut back your expenses, that doesn't sound as fun. But if I'm like, hey, I'm going to have this epic adventure in 3 years, That motivates me.
Yeah, instead of getting Chipotle for lunch on Friday, be like, "You know what? In a year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm gonna be eating street tacos in Mexico while I learn Spanish for a month." Like, I'm still eating the same tacos, but where I'm doing it and why I'm doing it is very different. And it even if you're like, "I can't cut back," like, I'm at bare bones budget here, adding in an extra $200 of income, maybe that's you dog sit a couple times a month. I know some dog sitters, like, $200 is just a standard one-time fee, you dog sit for a week every month, and now you have that one small trade-off, but you get this really cool reward. On the other side, I've had, CFOs, people who have very important positions in companies, and they're like, "Yeah, that's great." For people who don't work, quote unquote important jobs. But like I'm indispensable. I'm way too important. Maybe they have the financial means, like the money's not the issue. They just don't feel like they can get the time off. So everyone has kind of their hesitations. And to them, to the really important, essential people, I'll say I had a guy at an event I spoke at who was like, there's no one in my company that can do my job. They absolutely can't survive without me. And I was like, cool, cool. So if you left to do this mini retirement, how long would it take to replace you? And he goes, oh, shoot, for my position, that's like 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, of course. How long would it take for them to train the new person to get them really up to speed to where they even have a chance of performing at the level you perform? They're like, yeah, that's probably another 6 months. And I was like, okay, so what is easier and cheaper and simpler for them? Give you a month off or have this role underperform for 12 months?
Ooh, that that is amazing. It's so true. It's so true, but I run my own business and I am the business,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
I don't know how I would completely be away for a month or 2 because when I take vacations, I'm typically checking back in. I am minimally available to my clients on certain days and times just in case.
Yeah.
How have you figured out that one?
Self-employment is so funny because when people work 9 to 5, they're like, "Well, of course it's easy for you. Like, you're your own boss. You can't say no." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's so much more complicated, and it's so much more preparation." I think about mini retirements for self-employed people a little bit like spring cleaning. You're gonna have to unpack everything in your business and get it organized and streamlined and efficient in order for you to be able to do this. But the really incredible thing is that you come home to this tidy, efficient business. And you might come home, maybe you're working 40 hours a week now, and you're able to take a month off. You might come home and realize, oh, shoot, with this new business, like I only need to work 30 hours a week. So entrepreneurs go one of two ways. They're like, actually, this is a much better work-life balance. I'm just working 30 hours a week from now on. Or they go, I had this cool idea. I have this inspiration. There's this other project I've wanted to do for a long time. I just didn't have the bandwidth. So the preparation process, honestly, for a lot of self-employed people, this might take 6 months. It might take 3 months to just get everything squared away. You have to simplify things. Like, there are some things in our business that's just it's complicated because, like, it's easier to do it kinda the wrong way than to take the time to fix it. Um, you have to start to automate things, which there again, it's more upfront work to create the automation versus just do it manually. And then you have to start documenting what actually is my process, what actually is my system. But after it's simple and it's automated and it's documented, then you can start to delegate things. And this is where your business becomes stronger, it becomes better in the process. It is a ton of work. It's so annoying. It is like spring cleaning. It's like worse before it gets better, but you come back to something better and stronger.
Do you do your mini retirements alone or do you do them with your spouse or a little of both?
All of the above. We've done a lot as a family. Um, and then in the last year, my spouse and I separated. And so now we're doing less things as a family unit. And I do get to do more things solo. Not that I did things solo before. Um, but yeah, a whole new season of life.
Okay, so I heard you talking in one interview about Taking a break from work and comparing that to halftime during a game, because I think that there is this tendency for people to think, oh, if you're taking a month or two off work, you must be lazy.
Yeah, there is I think people internalize like, "Oh, well, if I took time off, like, will people think I'm lazy or undisciplined or not motivated or not really invested?" The reality is people who take mini retirements, it takes so much planning. It takes so much dedication. It takes vision and creativity. And everyone who's listening that's like, "Yeah, that's cool, but I'm kind of scared." You have to be brave. Like, you have to be courageous to do this thing. Um, and I think potential employers, like, if you're doing it in between, they see that, like, wow, they did something exceptional and something unusual that wasn't easy to pull off, and it's a really compelling trait. But I do compare it to like, I played basketball in high school, and you take a halftime, and and everyone takes the halftime. The most dedicated, the hardest working, the people that are the most committed to the outcomes, they're not like, "I'll just, I'm just gonna play through the break." Like, "You all take a break because you don't actually care about the sport, but I care about the sport, so I'm just gonna keep going." You take the halftime because you care, because you're a high performer, and because the outcomes matter significantly. I think mini retirements work best for ambitious high performers because they're the ones most likely to burn out because they do too much, maybe. They do a lot extra. They put more thought, more emotional energy, more time, more effort into their work, which is why they outperform everyone. But they also have that greater risk of kind of crashing and burning.
I know it's easy to come up with all the reasons why we can't do a mini retirement. And I know that part of your mission is to help people with any budget being able to take this mini retirement. I mean, we talked about the idea of saving $200 a month, but I know that we have listeners who are literally just trying to make rent. They're maybe coming out of a divorce or something like that, and they are every month like super tight on the money. I can just pay rent and the groceries or things like that. How do you advise people in that capacity trying to make that work, or with other reasons why they say, "I can't make it work. My kids are in too many extracurriculars and there would be no way to do the thing."
So replacing your monthly spending plus 50% is kind of the worst case scenario. That's probably the most expensive option. There's a lot of ways if you're like, I love the idea. I don't have that much extra income saved. For a lot of the trips that I've done when we've done big road trips, we rented out our house. So if you think about that $5,000 budget, we rented out our house for 2,500. That covered the whole cost of our trip, just that one extra decision. There are some people, maybe you start a little side hustle that you could continue during your mini retirement. Um, there's a lot of ways to kind of fudge the numbers and make it work. The other thing is if you're early in your financial journey, start with the more affordable ones. Like save the around the world cruise till like you're rolling in cash at 80. Like 80-year-olds love cruises. Like that one you can wait on. Do the road trips with your kids. I spent a month last fall learning tango. I gave myself $1,000 budget. I probably didn't have to spend that much, but I spent $1,000 to learn this hobby that's like really interesting and healthy for me that I can enjoy for decades. So start with the more affordable ones and maybe find a couple ways to reduce your expenses, like renting out your house or boost your income during that time.
I've seen in my online travel groups people doing things like doing house swaps
Yeah.
where we'll live in each other's house for a month, or there are people who are looking for someone to come stay at their house with their cat or dog, and they'll let you stay there for free for a period of time. Like, you're right, there are ways to do this more affordably, and it does take some creativity, it takes some planning, but gosh, I'm all for that. What about people who have a traditional 9 to 5 job? Like, they're like, "Hey, I can't just tell them I'm gonna be gone for a month, or I don't get any paid time off, or I only get 2 weeks of paid time off." I don't think what I'm hearing from you is that this is a situation where you're gonna just take some paid time off and call it a day. This is a different process, right?
I mean, if your employer is willing to pay your time off, that's awesome. I would take it all day long. But that can be a harder sell. And so if people are looking at like 1 to 3 months, I encourage them and they want to come back to their job. They love their job. I encourage them to try to negotiate that time off because that's about the time period that most HR has some infrastructure in place for people being out of work and their healthcare staying on and like they know how to administratively handle that. When you're talking 6 months or a year, it gets a little complicated on the back end. But your job is to do this logistical, mental, emotional work up front because your boss is busy. Their plate is full. They don't need more problems dropped in their lap. If they said, "Hey, do you want to take on this huge problem?" They would be like, "No, thank you. I'm full up." So come to that first meeting prepared. Figure out the challenges. Figure out the fears or concerns they might have. And a counterintuitive piece of advice is to articulate and express what you think their fear and concern might be for them. Do that emotional labor for them because you want to get it into this really creative, collaborative approach. And to be in that space, they need to feel comfortable and confident saying, I've got some reasons why I think this won't work. So start that conversation. But show it prepared that you've put some thought into this.
But Jillian, if the boss gives me 2 months off to go run around, then they're gonna have to give everyone 2 months off to run around, and it's just gonna be chaos at the workplace.
And I'd be like, "Yeah, no one else can afford it." Like, I wouldn't worry about it. Like, this is it is a hard thing to pull off in that it takes courage and it takes planning and it takes kind of inspiration. And while my role is definitely to try to, like, reduce those barriers, I get I get just the general fear. I think the culture is shifting, and changing that it will be really commonplace moving forward just because of the nature of our careers now. I think people are gonna be working longer, therefore, they're gonna need breaks throughout that career.
I'd love to be able to come back to a boss and say, "Boss, if everyone got to take 2 months off unpaid once every 2 or 3 years and came back excited, energized, with new ideas, ready to work, I think we'd benefit as a workplace
Yes.
overall." I'd love to be able to say that to a boss.
So I have a whole chapter, a short chapter, but a whole chapter in the book of what if a company had every employee take a month off every year? How would this actually be massively beneficial for that company in a way that doesn't add a ton of cost? The worst case additional cost on that is 8%. And when you think about creating more attractive incentive, offers, 8% isn't huge, but there's so many benefits. The benefits of being able to cross-train people, the benefits of having one person who isn't, like, the holder of all the knowledge, um, it just creates more resilient teams, and for women, especially if you feel like you have a lot of obligations, oftentimes there can be a disadvantage because our lives outside of work are so demanding that the additional training, the additional certifications, the additional personal development that maybe our colleagues get, we don't feel like we have as much access to because our plates are full at home. And so being able to give everyone a month off, it helps that equality of everyone's going to have that ability to get additional training, additional certifications, or just like go to Toastmasters, like read some personal development books. I think it really helps level that playing field.
Well, let's talk about your book. It's called Retire Often. It's coming out on September 9th. Of course, we're gonna link to it in the show notes. I wanna hear a little bit more about it.
So the book is, it's not super fluffy. Like it's a little bit like this is a really cool idea, but it's born out of I've done this one-on-one coaching, I've done this group coaching, I've talked to groups all around the country, like, I've been in the trenches with people actually doing this. So, it is every concern you have, every fear, every logistical I'm not sure how I would pull that off. Through 4 steps, we walk through that. How do you negotiate it? How do you negotiate this? Here's what you say in the opening email. Here's how you structure that conversation. Here's how you frame what this conversation is gonna sound like when you explain your mini retirement story. It's very specific. How to create the budget, like how to save for it, how to use mini retirements as not just a vacation, but sometimes wealth building activities. I've taken a dozen of them. A couple of those massively accelerated my path to financial independence because I had the ability and the bandwidth to invest in real estate and to like buy rentals. The house I'm sitting in now was a mini retirement purchase, like 9 years ago. We took a month off, we bought it, it was a fixer-upper, we did the renovations, we got it rented, and then moved into it 7 years ago. That 1 month off, we lost like $3,000, $4,000 of income. The house has appreciated 300,000. So, huge difference in our financial
Yeah.
trajectory from just taking a month off.
Well, I haven't yet read the book, but I did see an outline of the chapters with some summaries. And my first impression from the book was this is very tactical, strategic, helping people with the logistics of how would I actually accomplish this. So, if a mini retirement is something that your interest now is up into, this book I think would be really helpful for anyone.
It's something that I hope people realize should be an essential part of your career path. Because by not taking mini retirements, by not switching employers, you're massively going to diminish your lifetime earning potential. Your biggest opportunity for increasing your income is a switch between employers. So if you plan, you know what, every 3 to 5 years, I'm going to take a month off or 3 months off and I'm going to switch jobs, you might massively increase your lifetime earning potential. I had one friend who first mistake, worked at the same company for 15 years, took a year off. Um, when he came back to his next job, it was a 50% raise. A
Wow.
50% raise. So if we do the math on that, let's say he was earning 100 and now was earning 150,000, he left $50,000 on the table, let's say for 8 years. He
Hmm.
lost $400,000. And even if a year off cost him 100 grand, which it didn't, 300,000. And if you invest that at 35 at this point, you have so much money on the table in your retirement. You would have $1 million in retirement just because you didn't take mini retirements.
Yeah, it's time to get strategic about
Yeah.
our careers,
Yep.
about our free time. It's time to reclaim our free time and the things that interest us. Jillian Johnsrud, author of the new book, Retire Often. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you as well.